the deadliest dictators in history. Humanity has a bad habit of letting the wrong people run the show. Across centuries, charismatic tyrants have promised order, delivered chaos, and measured success by body count. They built monuments, rewrote history, and convinced millions that cruelty was patriotism. Today, we're diving into the rulers whose egos reshaped nations and ended tens of millions of lives. From totalitarian dreamers to paranoid generals, this is the Dark Hall of Fame of absolute power. Sorry to interrupt, but dictators fall, empires crumble, and yet somehow people still forget to subscribe. Don't be that person. Thanks. Adolf Hitler. Few names summon horror faster. Adolf Hitler ruled Nazi Germany from 1933 to 1945, turning an economic depression into global destruction. Under his dictatorship, fascism became state religion, propaganda became oxygen, and extermination became policy. His invasion of Poland ignited World War II, leaving over 75 million dead worldwide. 6 million Jewish people were systematically murdered in concentration camps, alongside millions of others labeled undesirable. He rebuilt Germany's industry by militarizing it, silenced opposition through fear, and used nationalism as a weapon. By the time his empire collapsed, Europe was ash and rubble. Hitler's legacy isn't just genocide, it's a lesson in how mass manipulation and unchecked power can erase humanity overnight. Joseph Stalin. While Hitler burned Europe, Joseph Stalin froze his own country in terror. Ruling the Soviet Union from the mid-1920s until 1953, Stalin industrialized the nation with brutal speed and even greater cruelty. His forced collectivization of agriculture triggered the Ukrainian famine that killed millions. Political purges executed or imprisoned anyone suspected of disloyalty, including allies who once praised him. Entire ethnic groups were deported to Siberia in a single night. Historians estimate 20 million deaths linked to his policies, many from starvation and forced labor camps called gulags. Yet propaganda painted him as the father of nations. Stalin proved that dictatorship doesn't always need chaos. Sometimes it thrives on bureaucracy, paperwork, and silence. Mao Zedong. China's revolutionary hero became its deadliest ruler. From 1949 to 1976, Mao Zedong led the People's Republic of China through campaigns that promised equality and delivered catastrophe. His Great Leap Forward aimed to modernize agriculture and industry, but instead caused one of the worst famines in human history, over 30 million deaths. The Cultural Revolution followed, tearing communities apart as citizens denounced neighbors and ancient culture was destroyed in the name of purity. Mao built a cult of personality so intense that loyalty replaced logic. Even decades later, his portrait still watches over Tiananmen Square, a symbol of both revolution and ruin. He unified a nation, but at the cost of millions of lives and erased traditions. Pol Pot. If you wanted to design a nightmare, you'd start with Pol Pot. As leader of Cambodia's Khmer Rouge from 1975 to 1979, he tried to create a perfect agrarian society by eliminating anything considered modern or educated. Cities were emptied overnight, and 2 million people, 1/4 of the population, were executed, starved, or worked to death. Wearing glasses was enough to get you labeled an intellectual and killed. Schools, hospitals, and money were abolished in favor of forced farming communes. Pol Pot called it social reform. Historians call it genocide. His regime collapsed after 4 years, but the scars still divide Cambodia. He proved how ideology, when stripped of humanity, becomes a weapon of mass extinction. Saddam Hussein. Iraq under Saddam Hussein from 1979 to 2003 was a masterclass in fear disguised as nationalism. Backed by an iron military and a cult of personality, Saddam crushed dissent with executions, torture, and chemical attacks. His invasion of Iran triggered an 8-year war that killed 1 million people. His 1990 invasion of Kuwait sparked global conflict and decades of instability. Saddam used oil wealth to build palaces, while ordinary Iraqis faced sanctions and poverty. He ruled through family loyalty and paranoia until his downfall in 2003. Even after death, his shadow hangs over the Middle East, a reminder that power without accountability always ends in flames. Leopold II of Belgium. Behind Belgium's polished image lies a king whose greed redefined cruelty. Leopold II never visited most of the Congo Free State he claimed as his personal property in the late 1800s. Yet he profited from its suffering. Rubber extraction under his rule led to mutilations, forced labor, and up to 10 million deaths. Villages were destroyed to meet quotas, and resistance was punished by amputation. All this funded grand architecture in Brussels that still stands today. Leopold disguised exploitation as philanthropy, calling it civilization. In truth, it was one of history's first corporate genocides, proof that colonial ambition can rival any dictator's brutality. Kim Il-sung, the founder of North Korea, ruled from 1948 until 1994, crafting a dynasty of control that survives to this day. Kim Il-sung fused communism with extreme nationalism and absolute worship of his image. The Korean War, launched in 1950, devastated the peninsula and cemented a dictatorship that isolates its people behind propaganda. His policies engineered famine, imprisonment, and mass surveillance long before the digital age. Even decades later, portraits of Kim still hang in every home by law. His rule built not just a nation, but a hereditary system of fear. North Korea remains one of the world's most closed societies, his ultimate monument to control. Suharto. Indonesia's Suharto seized power in 1967 and ruled until 1998, selling stability at the price of blood. His rise began after an anti-communist purge that killed at least 500,000 people in 1 year. Backed by Western governments as a bulwark against communism, Suharto turned Indonesia into a corporate playground while silencing opposition. Corruption flourished under his new order, and billions disappeared into private hands. He annexed East Timor in 1975, where another 200,000 civilians perished. For 3 decades, Suharto mastered the art of dictatorship through smiles, suits, and censorship. A reminder that tyranny often wears a business tie, not a uniform. Mengistu Haile Mariam. In 1974, Ethiopia's monarchy collapsed, and Mengistu Haile Mariam stepped in promising revolution. Instead, he delivered famine and purges under a regime known as the Red Terror. Between 1977 and 1991, thousands of opponents, real or imagined, were executed, often in public squares to spread fear. His forced collectivization policies worsened a catastrophic famine that killed over 1 million. Aid workers who tried to help were accused of espionage. Mengistu fled to Zimbabwe after his government collapsed, living comfortably in exile while survivors still grieve. His legacy remains one of betrayal. Liberation turned into oppression. Omar al-Bashir. Sudan's Omar al-Bashir ruled from 1989 to 2019, turning one of Africa's largest nations into a case study in state-sponsored brutality. Rising from a military coup, he promised order and delivered genocide. His regime waged scorched earth campaigns in Darfur that killed more than 300,000 people and displaced millions. Entire villages vanished under bombing raids and militia attacks, while the world hesitated behind diplomatic language. Bashir used religion and nationalism as tools, silencing dissent with prisons and secret police. Even after the International Criminal Court charged him with crimes against humanity, he traveled freely across allied states, proving how power shields the powerful. His fall in 2019 came not from justice, but from popular revolt. Today he sits as a symbol of how long the world will tolerate atrocity when oil and alliances are on the table. Kim Jong-il. When Kim Il-sung died in 1994, his son Kim Jong-il inherited not just North Korea, but an entire machinery of worship and fear. For 17 years, he ruled a nation sealed from reality, where propaganda replaced truth and loyalty replaced food. In the 1990s, famine known as the Arduous March, up to 3 million people died while the regime prioritized military spending and luxury imports. Outside aid was restricted, defectors were executed, and citizens survived on bark and grass. Kim perfected the image of a divine leader. Films, songs, and school lessons all glorified his genius. Yet behind the smiles and parades, prison camps expanded and families disappeared for minor offenses. By the time he died in 2011, North Korea had become both a nuclear power and a humanitarian disaster. His legacy lives on through his son Kim Jong-un, proving that dynastic dictatorship can outlast almost anything, even starvation. Yahya Khan. Pakistan's General Agha Muhammad Yahya Khan ruled from 1969 to 1971 and oversaw one of the 20th century's hidden genocides. When Bangladesh, then East Pakistan, demanded independence after winning a democratic election, Yahya sent in the army to restore order. The result was Operation Searchlight, a campaign of mass killings, sexual violence, and scorched earth tactics that left as many as 3 million Bengalis dead and 10 million as refugees. Journalists were banned, foreign aid workers expelled, and the world largely looked away until India intervened. Yahya's forces targeted intellectuals, students, and minorities in what historians now call the Bangladesh Genocide. His government collapsed after the war, and he lived out his days quietly under house arrest, never tried for his crimes. Yahya Khan remains the cautionary tale of a general who mistook national unity for domination and drowned a nation's birth in blood. Bashar al-Assad. When Bashar al-Assad inherited Syria's presidency in 2000, the world hoped for reform. Instead, his regime became one of the 21st century's worst humanitarian crises. Peaceful protests in 2011 spiraled into civil war when Assad's forces opened fire on civilians. The conflict has killed hundreds of thousands and displaced over 10 million people. Chemical weapons, mass detentions, and bombardments of cities like Aleppo turned Syria into a synonym for suffering. Supported by allies like Russia and Iran, Assad clings to power through fear and propaganda. His survival proves that modern dictators no longer need ideology, just control of the narrative and the skies. Vladimir Lenin. Before Stalin's reign, Lenin laid the foundation for one-party rule in the Soviet Union. Leading the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, he overthrew the Russian monarchy and replaced it with a system that promised equality but delivered repression. During the Civil War, Lenin authorized the Red Terror, executions and censorship to eliminate enemies of the state. His centralized power structure ensured no future opposition could exist, paving the way for Stalin's excesses. Lenin remains divisive. Celebrated as a revolutionary by some, condemned as the architect of totalitarianism by others. He proved that good intentions can still build iron cages. Chiang Kai-shek. In China's turbulent 20th century, Chiang Kai-shek led the nationalist government from the 1920s until his retreat to Taiwan in 1949. He fought communists, Japanese invaders, and his own citizens with equal ferocity. Under his rule, corruption thrived, political opponents vanished, and the 1947 February 28th massacre in Taiwan left thousands dead. Chiang saw himself as the savior of Chinese civilization, but often ruled through martial law and fear. While credited for preserving Taiwan's eventual democracy, his decades in power exemplify how authoritarianism can wear patriotic colors while suffocating the very freedom it claims to defend. Francisco Franco. Spain under Francisco Franco lived in silence from 1939 to 1975. Emerging victorious from the Spanish Civil War, he merged nationalism, Catholicism, and military control into a dictatorship that lasted nearly 4 decades. Tens of thousands of political prisoners were executed or forced into labor camps. Regional languages and cultures were banned in favor of uniform identity. Franco presented himself as Europe's protector against communism, gaining quiet support from Western powers. When he died, Spain faced the enormous task of unlearning fear. His rule showed that not all dictators need global wars. Some destroy nations simply by freezing them in time. Idi Amin. Uganda's Idi Amin ruled from 1971 to 1979 with brutality so surreal it bordered on parody. A former soldier, he seized power in a coup and transformed Uganda into a theater of chaos. An estimated 500,000 people were killed through purges, tribal violence, and economic collapse. Amin expelled the country's Asian minority, crippling its economy, while declaring himself titles like conqueror of the British Empire. His erratic rule combined humor and horror, lavish banquets followed by executions. Amin fled in 1979, leaving behind a nation traumatized and bankrupt. He remains proof that dictatorship can be both absurd and catastrophic at once. And there you have it. So what do you think of history's deadliest dictators? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.